right, everybody. Hope you're doing good. We're back with another edition of Casey Music Talk. I'm Rob Foster. If you like some of these interviews that we've been doing, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And today we are talking with a singer from Kansas City, Millie Edwards. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I remember. I think probably maybe the first time where we met each other was probably your Phoenix Jam. It may have been before then.
It may have been, but I met you. I remember you specifically from the Phoenix Jam. I remember your mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
I remember.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where we met.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did it for what, 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did it with Tom for a while. Tom's done an interview on here.
I did.
Yeah.
I started, I think, with Michael Pagan,
Right.
and then I ended up with Tom. Mm-hmm. DeMasters.
Yeah.
And Tom and I have known each other for years.
Yeah. I like Tom a lot.
Good man.
Yeah, go watch his interview too. We did one with him. But so you and I have talked, a bunch of random times over the years at the jam and stuff. And you've always been really nice to me. I appreciate that. And
you're a good person.
Thanks. I don't really know a ton about how you kind of got started playing and stuff. So share a little bit of that.
I started in church.
Mm-hmm.
I was the pianist in church, and I started with piano at 4, and then I picked up the viola.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I think I remember us talking about that. Yeah.
I never sang in choir. It was always piano and viola.
Wow.
Multiple piano was a concert I did with like 16 or 18 girls. I played in the orchestra in junior high school and high school and went to competitions at MU and Warrensburg. Yeah. And I received several scholarships. My undergrad I did at Ottawa University. And I had an athletic scholarship, and I had an academic scholarship, but I had a music scholarship because my dad loved jazz, my mom loved jazz, my grandmother was a piano player, but I had studied the classics, so I was classically trained. So I went to college on a music scholarship for performance, and I thought I'd be a music teacher. And I got there, and that was during the time when colleges had money. And so it was nothing for Clark Terry to come to Ottawa University. It was nothing. For 2 years I worked with Aaron Copeland.
Wow.
And Aaron Copeland, and by that time I joined the choir because my parents and I had agreed on a set amount that they were going to send me. And I called them and I said, I need more money. That's not enough. And they said, well, you figure it out. And that's when coffee houses were big. So I purchased all of the songbooks I could. Carole King, James Taylor, Richie Havens, Melissa Manchester, Elton John. I purchased Simon and Garfunkel. In fact, I have a huge music collection. I purchased the songbooks and I started doing coffee houses on campus. And then the choir director asked me if I'd like to be in the choir, and that they took choir tours, 2 or 3 times a year. And I'd never been in a choir, and I said, okay. So I got in the choir, and Aaron, that was the year we did Appalachian Spring, and Aaron Copeland had a private conversation with me, and he said, you should sing. And I'm like, really? I said, I play piano and viola. He goes, you should sing. And by the time I graduated with a degree in teaching, a minor in music, I had decided I didn't want to teach music. I didn't want to be a performance major. I wanted to get my degrees, and I wanted to go on the road. And so as soon as I graduated, I took a job just to move out of the house and get an apartment. And then I I joined a band. The first band I was ever in was Chaos, and it was one of those Lounge Lizard hotel type groups. Quit my job, went on the road. And
Like it was like being in chaos, or the name was Chaos?
It was chaos because I sang with a great singer, a great blues singer, Jimmy LaForte. Everybody who's been around music for a while knew Jimmy LaForte. And I was a young kid out of college, and I thought, my music and my voice, they're just going to think it's wonderful. Well, being in a band is being in a band. All the personalities, working with each other. We were on the road. We had an agent, Dave LaQuitty. We traveled the 4-state area. Jimmy was an incredible musician, difficult human being. So began my band life. And from there, it was chaos. Then I joined Northbound Express. I was in hotels. I was a lounge lizard. And after 2 years of that, I said, this is a rough life. Either I want to make it big, or I just want to work with great musicians and enjoy music. And I decided on the latter. Went to work for AT&T. Was only going to stay a short time. Ended up staying 25 years. When Southwestern Bell purchased them, I had enough, my numbers added up so I could take a buyout. I then, singing the whole way, singing on weekends. I had a 4-state area that I was responsible for the company. I traveled during the week, come home on the weekend, perform, had a hanging clothes suitcase. I changed the clothes, changed my whatever I needed in the way of a toothbrush, deodorant, soap, put in new clothes after we did laundry, get back on the plane. It was like that for 2 or 3 years. And then my husband's like, oh, God, are you ever going to stay home? But I didn't want to give up music because I love music. So I took the buyout in 2005. I thought I would do nonprofit and just sing. And then someone saw me singing at the now defunct Jardines, which was the club on Main Street. They saw me and they said, why don't you come to work for Metropolitan Community College? I said, I haven't been in a classroom for 25, 30 years. And they said, just do the interview. Did the interview. I'm now the reading coordinator located at Penn Valley. And I thoroughly enjoy this career because you're making a difference in somebody's life. Corporate was very lucrative, but when someone can't read or write and they're taking classes to improve that skill and learn how, then you're changing their life, their family's life, you're making them a good corporate citizen. Because when you can't read and write, you can't do anything. You can't put a toy together for your kid. You can't read a sign. And so I focus on critical thinking and comprehension. So I've been doing that for 15 years. But all along the way, be it corporate, be it education, I've had an incredible music career. I've had the highs, I've had the lows, but I've worked with the greats. I mean, when I say Suzuki, who started the program, he came to school every year to say I could work with Aaron Copland, to say I could work with Clark Terry. Clark Terry and I hooked up later on when I sat on the board for Leon Brady's program, and we had him here as a special guest. So I've sat on several boards. I currently sit on UMKC's board, Friends of Jazz. We raised money for Bobby Watson, and he retired last year. And Mitch Butler came in, and Mitch retired because he went back home because so many of his family members are ill with COVID, and his family never moved up here, so he needs to get back home to take care of situations there. And now we have Carl Davis. I want to say Carl Davis. He's new. He's taking over the jazz program at UMKC. we're getting ready to have a welcoming for him. He was just on public television doing 50 years at the Kennedy Center, performing with the likes of Diane Reeves. He's a heavyweight. So we're welcoming him. But I've just had incredible opportunities. Worked with Everett DeVan, worked with Priscilla Bowman, warm up for a Vontella Bass, did all the spirit festivals, did jazz cruises with Charles Erland. I've had a great career.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. I'm curious. You had a choice there, because we've talked about this on the show a lot, of this choice to go for it or to have some sort of stability in this choice that we have to make as a musician. And
Right.
I haven't really seen a ton of, and maybe there's a lot more now, but when I first got to town about, 10 years ago, I was thinking of a handful of people that really could like play all month and have no other day job. And every other person that I asked, at the time I was talking to people like Matt Hopper, and he's like, well, yeah, I work for UPS, and then all these
Right.
other people, like, I'm the church director at blah, blah, blah church, and I go gig. Or
Right.
I have 25 students, and I go get,
Right.
everybody has this other thing that
Right.
they're doing. And what was going through your head when because you were talking about sort of making that decision of,
Right.
what was going through your head there?
Well, for me, when I was performing, it was at the tail end of when musicians had a gig 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
There used to be a time where musicians didn't really have to advertise. A restaurant, a hotel would hire you for 6 nights a week. Forever.
And they had a massive built-in crowd.
And they
all
had
that,
a
yeah.
they had a built-in crowd. You would be there for Marilyn May, Tommy and Julie Ruskin at the Strawberry Patch. They would have gigs for 6 nights a week. And then it started changing because people started falling in love with jukeboxes. And they saw that they could play any and every kind of music and not have to pay a musician. There's nothing like live music, but at the end of the day, follow the money trail. A club owner or a restaurant or just marketing and society changes. And what they desire and love changes.
Sure.
So
with the jukebox, I haven't heard that on the show yet. Nobody's said that because they've said a lot of other reasons why they feel like music is sort of, taken a little bit back seat compared to, like, let's say 1920, where it was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
And so, but I haven't heard that people talk about the jukebox.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting.
the jukebox, it changed the scene. I mean, if you don't remember, but there used to be jukeboxes in restaurants where they were just sitting there and you could put the money in and you could play whatever you want.
I remember those a little bit.
So you could have this piece of equipment and people could dance and listen to music 24/7.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, that was one of the reasons. There's a variety of reasons.
Sure.
But for me, being on the road is a hard life. I mean, you could write books, you could tell stories, people wouldn't believe it. I mean, I remember the first weekend I played out of town, Sweet Springs, Missouri, and the club owner, the club owner gave us hotels, and because I was the only girl in the group, I got a room by myself. And so I had my hair in my little pink rollers, and I had on my little pajamas and my gown, because I gotta remember, I'm right out of college.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready for bed with my little night cream, and all of a sudden I hear a knock on the door, and it's the keyboard player of the band, Bill Manis, who is a very good friend of mine, and that's who I started with. He goes, Millie, I don't want to kiss you. I don't want to crawl in bed with you. So Mark, just wipe all of those thoughts out of your head. I want to get some sleep, because he played a Hammond B3, and in those days you carried the Hammond B3 and the Leslies.
Wow. Yeah,
Okay?
screw that. Yeah.
Everybody who played a Hammond B3 and their 2 Leslies, they carried that sucker. And he said, Millie, I just want to go to bed. The band is drinking, they're partying, the music is loud. Please let me come in and sleep. I had to think about it. Okay. So that night, Bill Manis slept in my room. Another night, because there was 2 beds.
Yeah.
Another night, the drummer, Millie, I don't want to sleep with you. I really don't.
That
I just
is
want to
really
go
funny.
to sleep. So the story. If a musician never goes on the road, they are missing out on the stories and on the life. There are so many stories, and they're all true.
Yeah. Do you have another one off the top of your head? That's
Well, yes, and this is why I changed my mind. All right, another gig we had, Goshen, Indiana. I loved Goshen because they had tons of Amish settlements, and I could go there and eat dinner, eat lunch.
Probably some great food.
Oh my God! Oh my God! One night, the singer got so drunk he couldn't stand up. Bill was kicking bass with the left hand. And with the right hand, he was holding him up. He kept falling on him. His arm would bend, but he kept him on his feet long enough to finish the set. I never laughed so hard. Another night in Sedalia, Missouri, these 2 women fell in love with the lead singer and the conga player. And you know the deal with women and musicians. They were in love. And the musicians, they were good looking, but they had a Mercedes. So let's really hang with these girls. Both of them got so drunk, they were arguing about who was going to drive. So they get in the car with these 2 women. The women have a Mercedes. They are very attractive. They're going to drive them back to Kansas City where they can party some more. And they're fighting over who's going to drive the car. So I'm still at the club tearing down, because that's a part of it. Waiting to get paid, that's a part of it. This was the Red Roof Inn in Sedalia, Missouri. And they'd been gone about 10 minutes, so by the time we hopped in the van, because there's always a van, because you don't want to drive all the cars, you got to have a van to save money. I get in the van, and we're driving to Kansas City. And we look down the road. The Mercedes is in the middle of the road. We see 2 men in front of the lights of the car fighting. And they were fighting about who was going to drive. And we stopped. And then we saw the Mercedes go around them and drive off. So they ended up crawling in the van.
Wow.
And we all drove back to Kansas City.
Wow.
So the stories go on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And they're funny and it's exciting, but it's a hard life. It's a hard life. I remember one night driving to Lake Ogoboji. That's where Marilyn May, has performed every year.
That's Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like way up there.
Yeah.
We drove to do a 4-hour gig, and they said, well, we can put you up in a hotel. And the driver said, no, I want to go back. So after driving 6 or 7 hours,
trying to go back,
we drove back 6 or 7 hours. Got home at 3 or 4 in the morning. It's a hard life.
Yeah.
And at some point, I was sitting, I don't know where I was at, and I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? You either want to try to make it big And I never wanted to be a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted that life. I don't want my business, I don't want to live my life in public. I don't want people to know my private life. I don't want to have to look perfect 24/7. I want to go to the grocery store in a do-rag. I
Right.
want to work in my yard. I want to read. I want to live a normal life.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to be a celebrity. I never wanted to be famous.
Mm-hmm.
But then I always wanted music. So when I sat down, because my dad said, always honor the music. My dad was my biggest fan. I'd sit on the porch, I'd sit in a room and listen to Sarah Vaughan. I'd listen to Nancy Wilson. He loved, along with my mom and my grandma, jazz and jazz vocalists. He'd take me down to the foundation. He'd always say, honor the music. You didn't write it, honor it. Tell a story. So when I sat down and I reflected and I said, do I want to leave Kansas City? No, I love Kansas City. I was able later to travel the world. But when I made that decision, I was going around the country performing. I said, if I can always do music and work with great people, I will be content and I will be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a star. I don't want to be famous. I just want to make music. And when I made that decision, I went to work for AT&T, then Southwestern Bell, as an operator and moved up in the company. But it's a hard life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard life. People now that do music full time, many of them have, like you said, they're teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They have a part-time job, because to make money being a full-time musician only playing is a rough gig.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time where a musician could make a living, a full-time living off of music.
With a bad band.
With a bad band.
Because there was so many clubs.
There
and
were
stuff,
so
yeah.
many clubs. There were so many clubs.
Yeah.
And if they ran it like a business,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
they could make a living. But then as society changed, the clubs went away, money got short, the invention of the jukebox, everything started changing. It got to the point where the places that had music, they were asking the musicians to help advertise, to help bring in people. People love live music. There's nothing like connecting to an instrument, the vocal instrument. People love live music, but to make a full-time living in this day and time off of it,
It's tough.
it is tough. But all of us that are still in it are in it because of the love of music. And I love all kinds of music, because how do you start classically and end up doing contemporary, doing blues, doing jazz? I've done it all because I love all genres of music, and I'm not too good to do any of them because I love music.
Right. So, we talked, I had another interview last night, and we talked about this as well, and we've said this on the show a lot, is that where I'm sort of struggling is when I got into town and I started my own band. There was a lot of feeling that I had about the club owners,
Right.
and so I was sitting there and I was thinking a whole number of things. It was like, one, I was saying all these phrases to myself, like, yeah, these club owners they just won't pay us enough, and then I was thinking of, yeah, the internet's now come out, and so the greatest cute cat video of all time, we have to be better than the greatest cute cat video, to bring out people. We have to be better than the internet now. The entire internet, what am I, and I throw up my hands. I mean, also you mentioned the jukebox. I can think of things like DUI laws and stuff of why every single person isn't out having 9 vodkas every night now. There's that
Right.
of why people aren't coming out. Definitely, we've talked about on the show a lot how 1920, every single funeral and wedding and music was every single place in everything, and now it just seems like a lot of musicians aren't as quite as respected as they were. It seems like to me, as from what I hear from Ken Burns jazz videos and things like that, of what the 1920s, 1900s was like. And then you also have this whole pop situation of what's happened in the last 70 years of people, when Pink Floyd and Earth, Wind and Fire and Chicago and all these like great bands, jazz back in the day, and now the pop music is just different and it's a little bit more dumbed down. So I say all these phrases to myself, and the problem is that where I've come to, if you have a scale of my life is crappy, which one of you is to blame,
Right.
or it's everything is your fault, you just haven't worked hard enough and did it, and now I'm probably somewhere in the middle here. I've gone to this. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I
it
understand
feels
what you're saying.
It feels excusey to me when I say all those things, but my struggle is, the problem is all those things are true though.
Oh, yeah, they are.
And so how do you feel? I think you know where I'm going with this.
I know
all
where
these
you're going.
excuses.
You're right. You're right. And let's not forget that you've got ASCAP wanting.
Mm-hmm. That's another issue with the clubs themselves.
With the clubs themselves.
Yeah.
The clubs have to pay ASCAP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They got to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't pay them, okay?
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Been there, done that, I got the t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I have gotten older, because music now to me, my students are always like, well, Mrs. Nottingham, have you heard Killing Me Softly? Yeah, I remember the original Killing Me Softly with Roberta Flack. Lauryn Hill, copy that. Really? Wow, I didn't know that. It's just a whole different perspective when it comes to music. And everything you're saying, I got it. I never took my clothes off to sing a song. I never felt I had to get naked to do a song.
Right.
I sang the song and told the story, and that was enough. But now, the audience, there's an audience that wants that wants it to be dumbed down. They want women to be objects. And I'm not going to name any new performers or new rap artists, or it's not the music that I know. It's not the music that I'm trying to sell.
I will, Cardi B. But
and all I have to say is I want all these people to make their money now, because when they're 40 and 50, it's not going to sell.
Wall's coming.
Okay. So everything you're saying, and getting mad at club owners and because right out of college, I will always remember the agent that booked us. I was about the music, and I have always been about the music, and I will continue to be about the music. He said, Millie's got a really good voice, but she's not giving me enough tits and ass.
All right.
She's just not sitting it out there. And in order for her to get gigs and for you guys to work, you need to tell her to dress a little more sexy and give us some tits and ass.
Right.
So everything you're saying is right, true, and good, but it's like I tell my students, you've got to decide who you are, who you want to be, what story you're going to tell, and then fight for that story. And find those places where you can tell your story. We're not going to change the world. What the music business was in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and then we start seeing some change. But we're not going to change those people. We're not going to change people's minds, because some people just are, they want what they want, and no matter how right you may think you are, you've got to turn back inward and say, why did I get into this? Why am I doing this? Where are the venues where I can present what I believe is music and what I believe in? Because you're not going to change the world. Because in our country, it's about capitalism and what sells. It's not about talent anymore. It's not about ability. I don't believe that, because I see and hear what is being designated as music. Europe still appreciates music.
Right.
They still appreciate jazz. They still appreciate art. They still appreciate the classics. We are truly a capitalistic society, and money drives everything. So what have I decided as I have aged and gotten older? I still love music. I still am going to do music. I still listen to what I perceive as good music. You come to my house, you're going to hear everything. You drive in my car, you're going to hear everything.
Right.
But it's music from the 60s, the 70s, the classics. So you have to decide. I no longer get angry, because anger's not going to fix anything. Because there are still people out there that appreciate the art form. There are still clubs out there that embrace the art form. They're struggling. They are struggling, but they stand behind live music.
Yeah, and online is really interesting right now. Like, YouTube has been a whole nother animal, because like I see lots of talented people on YouTube, and YouTube, like, those people will get some likes. You know, they'll get some engagement, and that's what happens. Is they get on YouTube, and the crew of people that like them will come see them if they do a tour and stuff. But I just get so frustrated with, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show is I tell everybody on the show, like, I have an agenda for the show. There's a couple of questions that I wanted to get lots of opinions on and have conversations, and this is one big one. I've had so many conversations of kind of jaded musicians. The club owners, if the club owners would just, if the public would just, if they just don't know good music, and we're screwed, and and I love your answer, because like that's what I kind of feel like too. It's hard to, even though those things are true, there's a lot of people that are still making it despite that. And you got to go figure out why they're doing that.
That's right.
You're
right, because here's the deal. We're talking about music. We're talking about music. Just today, I did an exercise with my students, and it was an exercise about the haves and the have-nots, the people that count and the people that don't count. And I put it to them: you got to figure out what you stand for. You got to figure out who you are and what you stand for and who you're going to be in life. Are you going to let the group decide how you think and what you do? Or are you going to be a person that stands on your own 2 feet, makes your own decisions, so you're able to sleep at night? And when it came to music, I took a lot of grief in the beginning, because I had a day gig. I wasn't taken seriously.
They wanted you to be all in?
All in.
Yeah.
They said, well, she's not a real musician. A real musician is all in. I took that. Because I was caught where you are being angry and where I should be. I was caught with, should I quit my day job? But then on this other hand, my dad said, whatever you want to do, be the best you can be. If you want to be a street cleaner, be the best street cleaner you can be. Always be able to pay your bills and have a roof over your head. that was drowned into me. Be whatever you want to be, but accept the responsibilities, accept the confrontation, be held accountable. So for me, I wanted a day gig where I could pay my bills, so the love of the art was not colored. And I didn't come to hate it.
Yeah.
I didn't come to blame the world if I wasn't successful or doing well. So I kept the day gig. And because of that, I have been able to play my entire life. The other side of this is, like with anything, if you are a professional, and by no means am I perfect, but if you treat people with respect, who you are will come before you. And what I mean is, if you're a person that shows up at the gig on time, is professional, treats people with respect, not only the band, but the wait staff, because many people have lost gigs because of the wait staff and how they treat the wait staff.
Having nothing to do with their talent.
Having nothing to do with their talent, because this town is just
Loaded.
boiling over with talented people. Depending on how you are to work with, depending on who you are, makes a difference. And at the end of the day, who are you going to be? Why are you in the business? There are people who are in the business who are successful. There are clubs still trying to present quality music, and they are struggling. So where do you fit in? For me, I know what I think, I know what I feel, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to find places where I can do it and make it real. No more anger. I blame myself. I become accountable.
Good for you. I hope I'm not outing you very much, but I remember one time we had a conversation about teaching, and you said something to the effect of like the other day you had a student that came up and they were kind of, I can't remember if it was a guy or a girl, but you were kind of explaining that they came up. Well, I didn't have this and I didn't really get this done, so can I have like a 8-year extension on this? And you're like, hell no, like
No.
you like, and I thought that was really funny that you took that, it's great, that you were, that the kind of kids today, because now with the responsibility and taking accountability, it's too bad, because from what I understand, obviously people have wanted to lie and not take accountability forever. I mean, it's been whatever. But it seemed like there was a lot more societal like pressure on that, to with two-parent households and communities holding everybody accountable. And now I guess my question is, have you seen more of the blamey stuff recently with your job, or like with I'm talking about the kid, your students? Have you noticed any like differences between your students before in the last couple of years?
Since the pandemic?
No, well, just in the last, I don't know, 10 years or what, I'm asking like
students.
Yeah, I'm asking like 10 questions. At the same time,
well, no,
but,
that's okay. But students are students.
Mm.
You've got some students that are there for the right reason. Okay, and those students, I feel hopeful, because when I'm in my wheelchair or in my nursing's bed, I know that life is good. Those students will be responsible. But then there has been a dumbing down of America, a deep dumbing down of America. And education is no longer valued. If it were, I would not be a reading coordinator in a community college. How do you graduate from high school and you're not able to read or write? A lot of politicians a lot of parents, a lot of people believe it's okay to be stupid. There has been a major dumbing down. Europe, other countries are kicking our behind. Our kids are lacking. I don't care what school district it is, because I teach students from Blue Valley, from Blue Springs, whose parents wanted them to go to an Ivy League school and they weren't prepared. The fact that kids have to take reading and writing in a community college, or they go to a 4-year school and they cannot critically think, they cannot comprehend, that should be everyone's concern. I remember when I was the manager at AT&T and we would interview students right out of college, graduated from 4-year school. They're coming in at a $60,000, $70,000 a year job with benefits, with matching retirement. They look like they just got out of bed. When I asked them, and the managers will come in and say, Miss Millie, you got to come in and see this kid. And I'd go in and sit in a corner. When the question was asked, what are your strengths? That's simply a question about what you do well. What are your opportunities? What do you need to work on? I do everything well. I don't need to work on anything. And then their phone would go off and they'd answer it. That should be everyone's concern.
They're like, I'm a 10. No, you're not.
I'm not even a 10.
Yeah, right. And just as a person, I'm a 10, right?
Right.
There's nothing I need to work
Right.
on. I'm perfect. You know, like, yeah, that's.
I'm
wow.
I'm 3 times your age, and I work on myself every day. And you're telling me at 22 you're perfect? That is what we should be concerned about. Be that we are bringing children up that are not prepared.
I think that's the purpose of school, is to prepare you for adulthood. Obviously, I mean, and plus
It
parents
is.
and the but it's like
It
to
is.
make you be a competent, critical
Responsible.
thinking, responsible adult. You
But
know, and
our politicians are not pushing that, because if you are not a smart person, then they can tell you anything and do anything, and we are in serious trouble. And I cry every time I get a student that gets it. I cry.
pretty good feeling.
That is a great feeling, because you know they're going to change the world. And I see a lot of students wanting their education and want to fight to make things right. And that,
That's
to
awesome.
me, is inspiring.
I've been trying so hard in my lessons to keep asking them questions. I think when I was a younger teacher, I was telling, and I now am. I try to, like, I have an end goal of what I'm thinking in my head, like what they played, and it was, let's say it's rhythm or something, and
Right.
I'm trying to lead them to that, which is not always good, but I'm trying to ask them questions first and go, how did you just play just now? Tell me
Right.
something good that you did, because you did do something good that you didn't do last week.
Right.
Let's point that out. Don't just go, oh, it sucked.
Right.
And make them, like, engage their brain to your critical thinking thing. It's kind of little, but it's
No, it's not. It's
know.
important, because
Yeah.
now we have allowed kids to live in front of TVs and in front of video games. When I was a kid, I did go outside and play. I did go
I did
out
too, yeah.
until it was dark. I did create toys. I did play fantasy games. Now, you've got to get kids to think, because they want you to tell them everything. They don't want to have to take the chance
Yeah.
and do
yeah.
it themselves. They want you to tell them what they should do. And I'm not going to. You have to be the thinker. You have to make a decision. Make a decision, whether it's right or wrong. Make a decision. If-
I have this other student, this little girl. She's like 3rd or 4th grade, but the whole time she's, while she's
Right.
playing, she's looking for affirmation. She's looking for, did I do it right? Did I do it? You know, like
Right.
you can tell that that's what. And so a couple of times I go and stand behind her. I'm like, you don't get to look at me anymore. You need to be on your own and try this. Like you know, you're in third grade, but you're playing a song. You can handle this. You know, and then all of them, like I can tell that they. When I've been asking them questions about how they just played, I'm like, okay, like were you, you know, you were playing the stuff, and I know sometimes it's hard to listen to yourself because you're concentrating and stuff, but try, you know,
Right.
really think about what you're saying, think about what you're doing, like, and I've just been trying that recently, and I think it's working a lot because you're right, they want to be told. This is
Right.
why improv has been so hard for all my students. And that's what classical people don't like when I say that. I'm like, you're a follower in classical, and I'll say it again. You're a follower in classical. What do you wear to the concert? Well, tux. Even your literal outfit. Where are you sitting? Third chair. You're like, every single thing is told to you, and it's hard. You know, you have to play 30 years to get even into the symphony, but you're a follower. In jazz, you're a leader.
You're right.
You know, and it's
You're,
just
and
a
in
different,
dance,
you know,
and in
dance with
dance,
it, yeah.
in dance, because if they go to a club and they're freestyling, some of them are just not comfortable. You know,
When it's choreographed for them.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's easy, and in no way, am I downing a classical player or a dancer, but
It's a different skill.
you got to take a
Yeah.
chance. You got to take a chance. And I tell my students, you got to take a chance. Life doesn't. It's not a cookie cutter. You have to take chances. Life is not going to be. They're not going to tell you in your life everything. You've got to think outside the box. You have to figure it out. And you have to understand that everyone has a story. Because you have students now, or people now, that will say, I got a lot going on in my life. Or, I didn't do this because. Or, I didn't do this because. My argument is, everybody has a story and they're dealing with something. Always remember, your story is no more important than someone else's. It isn't. I had a girl today. Well, I had to go to the dentist, and that's why I was late. So I'm giving you my, you know what I said? I said, I give everyone 6. You manage that number, because your dental appointment is not any more important than that person that's taking care of their aging parent or their child, or they're on dialysis, or they're taking chemo. Everybody's got a story. Who am I to say yours is more important than theirs? I'm nobody.
They've asked so many. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but they've been asking. I've been watching all this dating stuff, and they're asking a lot of these women and men, like, what do you bring to the table? You keep saying you're a 10, and these people, like, they have such a entitlement.
Right.
So, you know, and that like, and then when you ask them, why is your dentist so much more, you know, and they literally can't even tell you.
They can't tell
you know, but they just know it. They just know that I'm special, you know, and I'm a 10, and like, and
Right.
and that's
Sad.
certainly entitlement has, again, been one of those things that's been around forever with certain people, but I think there's a lot more of it now.
Right.
There's a lot
There
more of
is.
it, you know. And they were saying that back. I was listening to this lady, Camille Paglia, but she was talking about back in the day, like my grandparents' generation. They grew, you know, born in the Great Depression. They got through World War II, and then they had the whole '60s, which was just nuts, and like, you know, so they've just been through a lot of stuff. And my parents' generation got to see that. And so they still, even though they were trying to, and that's one of the reasons why they coddled this generation, is because they didn't want their kids to have to go through that. But they sort of at least, she was joking that they saw the helmets and stuff in the garage, and they just had this sense of trial and tribulation more, because stuff was just way harder, you know, back then. And now stuff's gotten a lot easier in a number of ways. It's gotten a lot harder in other ways too, but there's a lot of stuff that's way easier now. And so it's like, it's tough. I don't know what I guess so what we can stop them from, like, if you're a parent, you can not let them on a screen all day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like what I'm trying to think out what we can do about that.
Well, I
you know,
think parents should be parents.
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember my mom saying, "I'm your parent. I'm not your friend."
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you have kids having kids, or when you have, because there's no book on parenting.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that a lot of parents want to be liked.
Mm.
A lot of parents want to be liked. My parents didn't want to be liked. My parents wanted to be parents. Mm-hmm. They wanted to develop and raise responsible kids. Mm-hmm. I think more parents should admit that it takes a village to raise a kid and to raise a child and to raise little people. And I think that they should trust more the teacher. And that's one thing the pandemic has done. Whereas before, teachers were, oh my God, we had 3 heads and we were worthless. Well, then the pandemic came and parents had to teach their children. They had to spend the day with their children. And they saw exactly, whether they admitted it or not, what teachers went through and the work the teachers did.
I'm starting to notice too with that in my dad, and I'm sure your parents or whatever, if something happened at school, my dad would go, "He did what?"
Exactly.
You know, and
that's
they would be
what
like,
my parents
"What
would
the
do.
What the fuck are you know?" Like, and they would turn to the kid like, "You did what?" And now today they're like,
It's
"Well,
fault.
you know, yeah." And
It's
they're
fault.
always on the kid's side today, and that's aggravating.
Oh, I could tell you stories
Yeah.
about parents that take their kids out of school for vacation and parents that want their kids to get certain grades because they want them to go to certain schools. That's not parenting. Because at the end of the day, that child's going to break your heart. That's what's going to happen. Parents need to be parents. People need to be good role models. If we talk about bullying, that bullying is coming from somewhere, and many times a child is being bullied at home, or they see it at home and they act it out at school, and it is a serious problem. Parents should be role models. People should be better role models. What kids see, they see adults acting out. How do you explain, for example, today we talked about Black Friday. This stuff for Black Friday is 2 or 3 years old, past seasons. People get equipment with not all the equipment in the box, a TV, a VCR, and you're willing to kill a guard or beat someone up for it. We have been dumbed down. We are not good role models for each other or for children. Children act out what they see adults doing. You go to a baseball game and see your child play, and because they didn't put them in, you want to beat up the coach, or you get into a fight with another parent.
Yeah, that's
nuts. This is not good images for kids. It's not. It's not.
And I think that, like, all that, because this is beyond kind of the music scope, but all of that affects all these people in bands, about how they're communicating to each other, and then all of us that are teaching music, and all the musicians that are now hypothetically coming up the ranks. And it's like, I get so frustrated with that, because I'm thinking of the young kid playing, and I'm like, man, I started at 3 years old. My parents were blasting music in the house all the time. Like, my mom was in a family band. I have similar to your story, where your parents were ridiculously supportive. They were blasting music at home. They had the knowledge to sort of help and whatever. And I'm out here gigging, and I've seen everybody on the show has said basically the same thing. My parents had it in the home in some shape or form, and they were supportive and whatever. But then I look at all these kids for music that aren't, I get the impression that they actually like don't even like music. You know what I mean? Like really, you know, like we love it. We love it, but you know, they like it, you know, but they're not like, I don't get the impression that like I'll ask them what their favorite band is and they're like, well, I don't know, you know, like, and so it's like I get frustrated because when I see those kind of kids, I'm like, I've played since I was 3 and I'm not good enough for the symphony. Like those guys are like that's NBA, you know. I mean, that's like, and so I'm looking at the kids and I'm saying, okay, so if symphony's not it, and in the next Duke Ellington band's not happening either, so what the hell are we doing here? And the only thing I can come back to is kind of all the stuff that we just talked about, is all the non-musical things becoming an adult. Stop making excuses, you know, self-discipline, you know, treat people with respect, attention to detail, like all of the, you know, all these things that you can teach them. But my problem is, as soon as I start trying to focus, stage fright in general, you know, about be confident in yourself and be able to get up in front of a couple people and go, yeah, I played violin. This is what I did. I practiced this song. And you just, you know, tell them about yourself. Don't be scared of it. And so, like, that's the stuff that I'm really fascinated by. And that's what I would like to incorporate more in my lessons.
You should.
But, and I sort of have been, but I feel like when I start doing that, especially with stuff like time management, because that's a huge, like, lesson to learn. And I don't know how many kids, the ones that are doing nothing and the ones that are doing literally everything, they're in 7 things. Right. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You can't be in 7 things.
No, but that's parents.
Yeah, and that's parents. And so now I come at the parents, but now I would love to like be, because I'm verging on life coach now. I'm psychologist life coach, and this isn't music lessons anymore. That's what I actually want to do with them. But now I feel like I'm verging into a different thing that's not really my job, and I struggle with that.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
I understand
you know,
what you're saying, but you know what? UMKC offers a business management course for musicians. That one years ago. I
didn't have that at you.
Because my argument is, whenever I talk to students, whenever I'm invited to speak, I not only talk about music, but I talk about the business side of it. And I talk about time management. Because that's one thing people constantly ask me. They said, with the life that you've had, how have you managed it? Well, first of all, you got to pick the right people to be in your life. Because if you don't have the right people in your life, it's going to get real messed up real quick. So you got to pick the right people to be in your life. Then you got to have good management skills. You've got to be organized. So when I go out to speak to students, that's what I talk about. Life skills. Because I love music. I love art. I love every form of it. But in order for me to truly enjoy and embrace it and be the best I can possibly be, because I'm still working and I'm still trying, I've got to have all those other skills. I've got to be self-managed, self-controlled, have good people in my life, look at my weekly schedule, look at my daily schedule, manage my time. You've got to do all that, because you don't just show up to a gig. You don't just show up.
Bunch of planning going
there's
on,
a bunch of stuff that happens before you get to that 6:30, that 7 o'clock, that 8 o'clock gig. There's a lot that goes on there. So realistically, you approach your student, and I approach my students holistically. I don't just look at the fact that they can't read or write, or if I'm speaking to a choir or a singing group, I don't just focus on the fact that they want to be singers. I focus on why do you want to be a singer, and what are you doing to be the best singer you can be, or why you want to be a musician, and what steps have you taken to be the best musician you can be. So
'Cause
I
that's what they
look
need
at
to
them
hear.
holistically.
Yeah, that's what they need to hear right now. Is they need to deal with those.
Those things.
Yeah.
Because learning to play is rote. In that there's exercises, there's note reading, there's theory, but you have to look at them holistically. Because if you don't look at them holistically, then they won't be successful. Because how do you explain musicians? Well, first of all, Billie Holiday and Charlie Parker, if they could have gotten help for their addictions, but they were black, so why would anyone want to give them help? But nowadays, if a musician goes down the wrong track, to me, they're not looking at themselves holistically. They have to look at the full person in order for them to be successful.
I know my mom always tells me, like, who's on your bus is kind of, and who would, a person who actually gives a crap, who would not even drive to the airport, but you know what I mean? Like, and so many times we get, and it sounded like Billie Holiday was definitely one of those people that was around a whole bunch of people that didn't really have her best interests in mind, as an example, you know, and so like that's so important when you have your talent, but then you keep picking the wrong people.
Right.
We deal with this in relationships all the time. You keep picking the wrong partner or whatever, and bands I would think would be the same.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
It's the same thing, because you keep, you pick bad people. You've got to have people around you that truly know you, support you, believe in you. And you don't have to have a group or a crowd, 3 or 4. That's enough. But then again, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Once you figure it out, where can I do it? Who will listen? Who will support me? Those are the kind of questions that I always ask. Always. Where can I go do this? What kind of stuff do I want to do?
That stuff will break you if you don't do it right.
It will break you.
Yeah.
It will break you down to nothing.
So to finish up here, tell me a little bit about what you've done with Wild Women, and tell me what you're kind of doing right now. Share with everybody what you got going on.
Well, right now, I'm gigging all over the place. I have church gigs. I have the Phoenix. I have Johnny's. I have speaking engagements. I teach full time. Wild Women, we lost Myra. But Lori, Geneva, and I are still together. We still do private events. We're going to do an event at Unity in August. Losing Myra was rough. But Lori, Geneva, and I continued on. A lot of people said, well, why aren't you doing clubs? Well, to be honest with you, we figured out how to make the same amount of money and only play an hour.
Yeah, right.
So we do a lot of private events. And then Unity on the Plaza now has a performing arts center.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to put on a show there in August.
Cool. Lori's always been really nice to me. I've talked to her a number of times at whenever at his jam and stuff, and other times, but she's always been really nice to me.
She is my hero. She's the nicest. Geneva, the nicest. They would tell you that I'm the evil stepsister. and I wear that crown proudly. But they are absolutely the nicest. Geneva's 92.
Yeah, wow.
And still sounds like a songbird. They're just good people. And the reason the Wild Women came together is we love music and we wanted to give back to the community. And that's what we did.
It's a cool concept.
We recognized women that, supported the music business. Doreen and Tony Oliver and her school, and just a lot of women that did great things for live music and for musicians. And that's why we came together, to have a good time, to enjoy the music, and to give back. And we're still together. That's
awesome. Well, keep that up. I always enjoy talking to you. You've always been really nice to me, and it was really fun to play at your jam when you had it, back at the Phoenix and whatever. And but I think that's good. So this has been KC Music Talk. This is Millie Edwards. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was
Finally,
fun.
we got together.
Yeah. That was really fun. Thanks. Tune into the next one. I'll see you guys later. Get out of here.